But through that, we had hundreds of thousands of YouTube views, LinkedIn live views, close to 800, 700,000 impressions that we had with spreading out our tentacles, so to say, with different people.
All right, today we have on here Ryan Yackel, the CMO of Databand.ai, the industry's first proactive data observability platform that spots data errors, triages them, and alerts the right people so that it can be fixed immediately. Ryan started his career in sales engineering, then product marketing, then running all of marketing, and he's had a unique perspective working with companies with highly technical products. I get asked this question all the time, but how do you market to developers? Well, today we're going to cover that exact topic. And fun fact is Ryan is a self-published author of a children's book, Pancakes with Mr. Bear. It's a fictional story that he would tell his kids, and he would refine the story by watching for their reaction when he added or took away certain characters. Eventually, he published that into a book. Ryan, it's great to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me, man.
Awesome. So let's dive into a quick background about yourself, and let's jump right into the topics.
Yeah, so I've worked in tech startups for the past decade or so. As you mentioned, my background comes from sales engineering. So I got started off with a company called QA Symphony, and I was the first sales engineer there, basically demoing all day, every day to prospective customers and resolving support tickets and helping sales just close deals. And so from there, it transpired that the marketing team was basically coming to me for anything related to messaging, positioning, the ideal customer profile. They wanted me to put on webinars, do videos. And so basically that turned into a product marketing role. And so I did that for about 5 years at a company called QA Symphony and Tricentis, ran global product marketing with teams over in Vienna and all the way to Vietnam. So that was fun. And then before Databand, I went to a company called Keyfactor, which is in the cybersecurity space, took over all of content and go to market for them. And then recently, being head of marketing over at Databand. So that's been my journey so far. And obviously, you mentioned I also wrote a children's book, so that was fun.
Yeah, the children's book is fascinating. You really did apply the product marketing skill set over into parenthood. And I love how you look at the reactions of your kids and that refine the messaging, eventually turning it into the actual book itself.
Yeah.
So great story, great background. Let's dive into how is DevTools marketing different than non-DevTools style marketing?
Yeah, the way I would describe it is really that if you had the best story and the best value prop that you could give to your audience, your ideal customer profile, and it was perfect and it was amazing, it was like, yeah, this is why we need to change. This is so cool. At the end of the day, that's only going to get you so far in the developer community. So I would say most of all of the products that I've worked on have been enterprise, business to business, SaaS companies. So from test automation and DevOps to cybersecurity to where I'm at now, which is more data engineering and data ops focused teams. You've got to tell the technical story alongside the why change story. And so you and I were talking about this before we got on, yesterday as prep for this. The first thing they're going to ask you, even if you hook them in with, hey, this is what challenges we solve, here are the pain points, here's where we can give you time back, so on and so forth. Immediately, they're going to start asking you questions around how do you integrate or how do you work with my current technology stack? Because if you're not going to meet the customer where they're at, especially in development, it's going to be a non-starter. And one of the things I like to give an analogy to is, if you built this amazing, NASCAR uh, race car, and it had all these like really cool new features on it, new engine, new braking, new clutch, all that stuff. And you were a seller of a Formula One car, and you were to show up to that driver and say, "Hey, we have a brand new car. It's a Formula One car. How about we just give you this car? You'll go a lot faster." They're going to go, "No, I need a NASCAR, and I need something that's close to a NASCAR. You can't just give me a totally different car expecting to drive the same loop, right? That car isn't designed for just turning left all the time. It's designed for going on high speed turns that are sharp corners, and you're going 200 miles plus versus 180 miles an hour. Totally different tire, totally different engine. So I liken that to how you need to approach developers and developer community. You can't just walk in there and say, "Hey, here's a brand new way to do something. Just forget what you're doing and try this new direction." They're not going to do that. They've if they spend a lot of time building that car, they spend a lot of time investing in the current technology. You've got to show them a path to how this is how we can make something more productive for you, while keeping your current tech stack. And if you have solutions that replace that tech stack, you've got to have an on ramp to get them to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But you can't just shine the light at them right away and say, "Hey, move here," because you're going to get kicked out of a room. You're going to get kicked out of a community before you do that. So marketing to developers is meeting them where they're at, answering their technical questions that they have, and not forcing something down their throat that is going to have them, redo all the years of work that they've had and have to abandon a lot of their technology stacks that they already have in place.
I love that. Having been a former developer, I can say that it is one of the hardest things to get everything 100% right. It's the most unforgiving role out there. Well, unforgiving as far as mistakes, because even if one small thing is wrong, if a package isn't uploaded correctly, if it's the wrong version, the code's not going to run. So I totally get your analogy. If we ask for a NASCAR, we cannot get a Formula One car. That's the first. Like then
Yeah.
it tells me you don't get it. And so, from your perspective, when you're trying to market dev tools, you have to really understand exactly the ecosystem, what they're going through, like extreme empathy on the customer. How did you get to that point? And maybe like as fast as possible.
I think that you have to. So I'll just kind of give examples of in the past, right? So even at this company Tricentis, we saw where the market was going in terms of the open source tool adoption that test engineers and automation engineers, developers were using a part of their overall testing suite. So things like TestNG or Robot Framework or just any. There's tons of them out there. Selenium for web testing. We had to tell stories and tell integration paths to all the things that they had to at least get them to be interested in the hook that we did. Even their project management solutions like Jira Software at the time, that was kind of blowing up. It wasn't something that was necessarily everyone had. Everyone was moving towards that. So you combine this open source landscape, you combine more tools that they're adopting that have like a higher, I would say, top down directive to start using. Then starting to tell stories that resonate with the customer in their current use case, but with the technologies they use. That's a way to really hook them into what you're doing. So you've got to, again, getting back to original, you've got to tell stories and value props to where they're at versus kind of where you want them to necessarily be. At this company, Key Factor, we did a lot of a lot of stories around the uh, public and private certificate authority market. So we already knew that there was a certain tools that they were already using, and we had to tell stories around why this solution that we have connects into this other solution that you're already using and makes it more productive. At Databand, our product is very much a add-on to their current tech stack that they have, and so in our space now, we're talking to a lot of data engineers, data scientists, analytics engineers, data platform users. They have what's called the modern data stack, which is just a catch-all way to say, here's a bunch of tools that we use from a bunch of different vendors, and we use them all together to deliver data. Well, one of the big problems that they have is that they don't know what's going on in their pipeline environment without something like Databand. And so we weren't coming in and saying, hey, you should ditch your way of moving data. We're coming in and saying, here's some of the challenges that we keep hearing from our customers. They keep telling us that you can't afford to know if a data pipeline is 2 hours late. You can't afford to know if a pipeline is down middle of the day when it should have been sending thousands of records over to a Snowflake table. Here's a bunch of, let's say, schema changes that we didn't even know about until it got consumed by one of our customers, and they had to alert it, right? So the story we had to tell was, in your current technology stack, you have stuff moving around that's really complex, it's confusing, it's heterogeneous. There's all these things kind of going on. If you had something that was like 1,000 eyeballs, it could at least give you the confidence that you don't need to have anxiety over if things are going right or going wrong. We can just tell you when those things are going wrong. Won't that make your life as a data engineer a lot easier? And you can actually focus on the things you want to do versus the things you don't want to do. So the example, Alan, you had mentioned being a former developer, right? What's the one thing developers hate the most? I would guess it is fixing bugs, right? You want to build, you don't want to fix. You're tired of fixing bugs that somebody calls out, and even if they're false bugs, and you say no, it's not really a bug. You're having that constant, back and forth. Same thing with data engineers and data platform users. They want to build. They want to build pipelines. They want to build data. They want to push data. They don't want to be fixing and maintaining things as they break. They want builders, not people that are they're building the house, not fixing the house after it's crumbled constantly.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. What it sounds like is, in addition to understanding your own product really, really well, you also have to understand the ecosystem of products that your customers or prospects are using every single day, almost even more, at least as well,
Yes,
because that's,
and an example with that. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
please.
And I was just saying, an example of that was my last company. We dealt in the public key infrastructure space, and so every time that we had a win loss and kind of debrief on why we won, why we lost, 9 times out of 10 when we won, it wasn't necessarily because of our product was so much better than like a competitor's product. It was that the customer really viewed us as cybersecurity experts. Not me, obviously, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but the way that we were able to consult them during a sales process and have our cybersecurity expertise on display, they understood that we got what they were trying to do. It's a very different sale than something like a project management tool, as we talked about earlier, like Asana or even Jira for that case, or Monday.com, or a design tool like maybe Canva or Figma. These are all tools you can just kind of jump in right away and not even talk to anybody and get going. But the learning curve around these tools as well isn't like insanely hard. It's not like this. You need to go to a whole 1 week work camp to get something up and going. And so you're talking to people that are in those senses, they're talking to people with very simple use cases. We're talking to people with very hard use cases and very complex use cases. And so you've got to talk that language and show what you're doing. And if you don't, they're gonna smell it a mile away, and you're gonna be like, these people don't know what the heck they're talking about.
Instantly lose credibility. So now
Yeah.
that you've had the right message, you've done the research, and then you said so yourself too, like anyone can do the research to study the space. You have the right message, you understand how your customers think about the problem. How do you reach them?
Yeah, so this is where we try to go to all the spaces that we know we can at least show up to. And then what we do is we say, what are areas that we need to partner with a third party to then get access to these communities? And so at Databand, as I talked about earlier, we primarily serve the data engineering team and data platform teams. Well, what events are they going to? What meetups are they going to? How can we put on, let's say, events for a topic that is not about our product but about a challenge that they have? How can we build these types of relationships that then they look at us and say, hey, these people know what they're doing? So examples are, at Databand, we went to a lot of open source data engineering conferences. So we went to things like Data Council, Apache Airflow Summit. These are all areas where you have expertise of people in the data space coming and talking about what they're doing. And we're either talking to them in a developer relationships example, or we're actually putting on an expo hall presence so they can come and talk to us. That's like the simple thing to do. Like that's nothing wild for me to say. The other one is, hey, let's put on meetups in spaces that we know is a big concentration of where our users are, and let's put on a meetup that is about a topic that is not about just the product that we're selling. And so we were the main sponsors of the Tel Aviv meetup for Apache Airflow. And so we got lots of different companies to come and give talks on, like, this is how I'm using Kubernetes with Airflow to do XYZ thing. This is the top best practices I've seen with Airflow 2.5 or 4.0 that just came out. And what that allowed us to do is get people that are interested in the topic of making their open source better come to this, meet up with us, talk with us. We're just talking about best practices that we've seen in the space. And then from there, if it pops up that, oh yeah, we're also Databand, we tie into Apache Airflow to do these 5 things, they go, oh, that's interesting. That's a problem I actually deal with. So it's a light touch of a way to build those relationships in a informal meetup environment. Get some pizza, get some beer, invite people to come in for a fun hangout, and then talk about a topic that they actually care about. And then, like, the third way that we do this is partnering with influencers. I know that word is, people don't like to use that word. Or say, I'll say data content creators that are on things like LinkedIn and YouTube. And so this past year, we spent a lot of time and resources figuring out who are the top voices on LinkedIn, who are the top voices on YouTube that are around a data engineering or data analytics or data strategy topic. We reached out to them, and some of these would be you would have to actually fund them and pay for more of a promotional aspect of it. Or we could do some of these kind of like, hey, I'll come on your podcast and I'll do some joint blogs with us together. It doesn't always have to be paid, but through that, we had hundreds of thousands of YouTube views, LinkedIn live views, close to 800, 700,000 impressions that we had with spreading out our tentacles, so to say, with different people. And that was just to get our brand name out there in a space that we're in, which is still in an emerging category. So, we had talked about all this in the sense of, how do you reach developers? And in the background, you could be, this is a mature category. We're in a category that's very immature and it's still emerging. So besides just talking in ways to resonate with the developer community that you're talking to, you have to actually reach them in a way and actually tell them about something or educate them about something that they may not even know about. And so a lot of the content that we created with these data creators were things around the topic of data quality, data reliability, data observability. They all point back to the solution that we have, but they were categories that may have not been or something they can actually resonate with, but then we point them to the category that we're actually in. And so an example of that is we partnered with George Farrakhan, and he is one of the top data leaders in this space for data governance. And data governance is a hot topic. It's a very mature category in the space. Lots of companies do things like data cataloging, and they have data governance solutions that are out there, metadata management, all these things. But the category that we're in is data observability. And we've been talking about how data observability is like a next pillar, or could be a next arm, so to say, of data governance. And so we wanted to talk to George to have him as an authority talk about data governance, and then talk about how data observability plays into data governance. So we're looking at the more mature categories and looking at how we can tie ourselves to those categories. That at least gives us at least a foot in a room when we're talking about higher strategic opportunities in an organization today. And observability may not be on their mind, but governance is on their mind. So we talk about, hey, we just had this webinar with George, and we talked about data quality and data observability and how that relates to data governance. This is a great way for you to take a look at him and see what take a look at him and see what he has to say about this space, right? So that's one example that we did. We did an example. We did another thing with Kate Strosny, who is one of the top leaders in the LinkedIn leaders in the space for data analytics and data analysis. And so we did a coffee and data event with her, where I just made coffee in front of a live camera, and we just talked about how the connections between making a pour over coffee is similar to, let's say, a data pipeline flow and the data going in it and all the different quality components you have to make a perfect cup of coffee, and where things could go bad with the grind size and the temperature and the if it's whole bean or if you had a pre-ground and the type of water, all that kind of those connections relate back to a data engineering problem with data observability. And so we had a fun event with that. We reached out to Andreas Kretz. He's got over 170,000 followers on his YouTube channel, and we had him do two things. One was a walkthrough guide around how to use data observability in a data engineering workflow, and then he actually did a full demo himself using the product, tying it into a Python library and showing it off himself. So now we have a third party that is all about telling people how to do data engineering better. And now he's also giving an example of how our solution then connects in with the things he's actually teaching. So all these are like light touches that we did to, one, broaden our brand awareness, but also give credibility to a space that is still emerging, and needs more, needs to get better traction around it, besides just us shouting from the rooftops and saying, hey, look how awesome data observability and databand is. Using different people to spread the word versus you yourself trying to do all the work yourself.
I love it. It's like you said, riding the tailcoats of an integration partner that's larger and people are already
Yep.
aware of. Do the same thing for influencers, do the same thing for the category. This is something tangentially related, and then we use this as the springboard to jump off of. So can we talk a little bit, coming back to the influencer program, because some of the other ones, the meetups,
Yep.
it's a little bit hard to track the how much we put in and how much we get out. With the influencer program, I think you had a
Yep.
quantitative metric around it, but how much did you guys invest? Well, how long did this program last, and what would you say what the results were?
Yeah, we invested about, I would say about 60 to 80 grand in the actual investment. And what we did was we spread that out between um, around 5 to 7 influencers with different packages that we had. And so, for example, with Kate, we did more of we did a few things where we had a coffee event, a live event that we did. We did a takeover session where we took over her entire channel to get access to all of the people that follow her. We did newsletters and we did influencer outreaches where we would partner with other people that she knew to then highlight what the topic around data observability. We partnered with somebody named Rabbit that we were able to do multiple webcasts around, again, the topic of data governance, data observability, data quality, 5 issues that you may run into as a data engineer. We also did an ebook with him around the top trends and the data space. With George, we did multiple webcasts, newsletters, and then a few. I talked about Andreas. We did that. We did a workshop and videos and a bunch of other things. I'm not touching on everything we did. We did a lot of stuff. We probably pumped out 30 to 40 assets of content that we had. And like I said earlier, the impressions we did were pretty good for what we invested into it. We had probably around 200 or 300,000 impressions alone just on LinkedIn. And that's not with just one channel; it's through multiple channels. We had around 100,000 YouTube views combined with all the people that we did content with. That's obviously still going up. We had around 1,000 downloads of the ebook that we had. All this got to our pipeline goal, and so we hit our marketing pipeline goal of 10x what our yearly budget was for Databand for last year. And I would say the one thing that we were able to track that related back to all this, obviously, is going to be the inbound requests that we got going to Databand. So that was all good. There were some blind spots, and I would say at the dark funnel, so to say, there were some blind spots that we had in this, but I would just say that besides just the table stakes of doing the SEO, doing paid stuff, doing events, doing thought leadership, the influencer program, I think, definitely gave us the credibility angle, at least from a brand awareness perspective, because we did get ancillary notes around in deals saying that they saw us on a LinkedIn post that Kate did, or they saw us on a YouTube video that Andreas did. And so, although we couldn't tie directly back to that specifically, we were able to get these anecdotal notes around the success of that program.
Amazing. Yeah. It's always hard to tie directly. Sometimes people use self attribution. How did you hear about us? Sometimes they ask about it during the
Right.
deal, and then you get some insights. But overall, it tends to be the case that you just look at how much your inbound pipeline has increased and the sales velocity has improved.
Right.
And no, so that's great. Um, the last topic is around PLG. And we talked about this before, but it's one of the best mechanisms to grow a dev tool. Can you go over that?
Yeah. So in my mind, there's really two ways that you can really succeed in a PLG motion with a highly technical dev product. One is having an open source to enterprise motion. So like my last company at Key Factor, there's a company, or sorry, open source project called EJBCA, which is a lot of acronyms, but it stands for Enterprise Java Bean Certificate Authority. And basically, what that is for the audience, it sounds really technical. It's basically a private certificate authority in cybersecurity that allows you to issue certificates for public key authentication, public and private key authentication. It's basically an encryption that you would do with a certificate. That was is the most popular open source certificate authority out there, besides Microsoft CA, which is like the incumbent, and then all these enterprises, which it's not really open source, but it's the thing you get if you were an enterprise, right? And so the motion for EJBCA was grow the community, grow the GitHub repositories, grow the commits to that, keep adding and contributing to that project. And then when people get to a point where they go, you know what, I don't want to manage this certificate authority on my own anymore. What are your options? And then we have options to go from enterprise on-prem to uh, uh, SaaS or cloud deployments or hyperscaler deployments. All of those were options for a customer to gravitate towards. And so, I would say 70% of all of the EJBCA enterprise deals that came through that came from the open source projects they're a part of. Lots of other companies do this very well. HashiCorp Vault does this with their HashiCorp, open source to paid version. And then the other way to do it is to have some type of onboarding experience that is freemium to paid. And if you can't get from freemium to paid, then you have to at least build a sandbox for developers to experience the product. So at Databand, we have click-through demos, we have a trial, we have product videos that go over all the content that we have how-to guides, we have all these things a developer can go to, or engineer rather, can go to and actually experience the product with their own hands. And so in PLG, especially in developer world, if the developers are the ones, or engineers are going to be the ones that are going to finally decide on if this product is going to be worthwhile or not, they've got to have access to that product. They've got to have access to at least have their hands on it and see how it's going to feel, versus just saying, hey, look how cool this thing is. And so Databand, we do not have a open source model that we have. We have more of the freemium trial version that we have. We don't actually have a freemium version right now. We're experimenting with it right now, but we have a click through to trial to paid version of the product. And so, and then coupled with a demo hub, technical documentation, how-to guides, all of that is something that we put out ungated so that the developer can go in, check it out, see how it works, and then hook up the integration on their own time. They don't have to. They don't have to contact us if they don't want to.
Tends to be the case. It's happening for sales tools as well. People don't want to talk to sales folks.
Yep.
They just want to try out the product, see if it works, and then we go from there. So the other thing that you mentioned that I'd love to get your perspective on more is when you open source a tool, that tends to get a lot of reach. You can open source it, anyone can build on top of it, and then the second they try to extend on it or they run into some managed service issue, then that's when you try to upsell. So curious from your perspective, how do you upsell once they've started using the tool? What are the triggers? How do you know?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a point where you get to either if you're doing it based off of a volume, like let's say so we're talking about open source versus freemium, right? So freemium is very simple. It's like, hey, we have uh, we're a part of your product. We have certain credits that we can attach to it. We get a certain credit amount or volume amount, then that's a trigger for us to tell you if we can do stuff, right? Open source is a little bit trickier because a lot of times when it's open source, you aren't allowed to use open source as a way to capture client information or client data. So, for example, like if you want to go and just download the you want to go download a open source package to a testing framework, you can go do that. Or a EGBCA, you can go download that product and start using it right away. You don't need to put in your information at all. You just go to your GitHub, get it, pull it down, and start using it. So the only way that you're going to really know if the customer is having a problem with an open source product is for them to actually tell you, or be a part of a community where they're showing problems or talking about pains that they're having, and it's obviously going to relate to scale. 9 times out of 10, it's always going to relate to scale. Sure, there could be some features that an enterprise version has, like if you had a hosted version of that open source product. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the scaling problem. They got to a certain point where they tried to DIY it. It was going well for a short interim time, but now they're like, I want to get rid of this. What's the cost of this thing? Tell me what it is, and I'll try to get procurement ready to go in a budget to allocate to this. So the open source thing is a little bit harder only because of the contact information that you may or may not have. Now you can build a whole community around that the open source products to then engage these customers, like using Slack or Discord or um, different types of forums to actually engage them, support them in their open source journey. Um, and if they want to freely give out their information for that, you can. But 9 times out of 10, they're going to have to self-select to talk to you and see if there's a solution out there. So everyone knows that the community editions and community places where people are, they're going to be sponsored by a product that's ultimately like an enterprise vendor. So they're not really scared of that, but they will, 9 times out of 10 are the ones that are going to be reaching out to you after they've had those scaling problems.
Fantastic. And to your point, if it's a freemium, it's much easier because then you can just look at credit usage. But for open source, it's far more difficult because you can't monitor that kind of stuff. So, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. This has been really enlightening for me. I hope it is for our audience as well. How can people find out more about you?
You can go to LinkedIn. Just go to Ryan Yackel. I think I'm like one of the only Ryan Yackels out there on LinkedIn, so you can connect me there. And if you have kids, you can buy my book too if you want. It's on Amazon. I make little to zero money off of the book. I did it for pure fun. So if anyone's out there looking to start their own children's book journey, please reach out to me. I can share a few blogs I've done on the whole process that I
I'm
did.
sure it helps with brand awareness as well. It hasn't turned the pipeline yet, but
Yeah,
awesome.
we'll see.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man.